Hello, everybody, and welcome to another E5 podcast. I am one of your hosts. My name is Paul Meenan. Thank you very much for joining us. And I am joined by my brothers from other mothers.
Oh, that's me. Hi, Dave Watts, Spark Ninja.
And
Dan Jackson, aka Dan's the Engineer.
Guys, we are going to talk today about a subject we've never spoke about, and some subjects we have spoken about. We're going to talk about CPD. Yes.
CPD, what's that?
I have no idea. You were going to tell me that. It's the whole point of this podcast. No, CPD is known as continuing or continuous professional development. Some people will call it continuing personal development. It literally depends on the employer and their interpretation. The IET, they call it continuing professional development because it's your professional registration, or when you're professionally registered, it's about the workplace. But I actually like both. I like continuing personal development, continuing professional development, because some of the stuff we do is about developing your own social skills and your own abilities. Dan.
Yes.
You work back in the electrical industry, and as part of your role, is it fair to say that you look at the skills, knowledge, attitude, training, qualifications and experience?
I do.
So what would you obviously look heavily at the competence of the people that work with you and for you.
Yeah.
What do you look for as far as that person pushing past their competence, their CPD? What's your view on it? How important do you think it is in your view?
Well, it's quite simple. A company's performance in terms of compliance, if you would like, is completely and directly related to the attitudes of training, CPD, and this obviously comes from management, Paul, because they pull the strings.
Management, dangerous words.
Management, dangerous words. Anyway, sorry, go on. You just swore at us. Sorry for that language. You just used the
management?
M-word. Oh,
I've done training, I've done consultancy just like Dan, and it's always the management that gets in the way sometimes.
Of course, because they're the ones who pull the strings. You know, and a business is completely a mirror of the.
I have a saying for that. I have a saying for that. The best saying I've ever heard for management is it's when tradesmen or people have complained about management, they put the best term is it's like the visually impaired leading the partially sighted. And I love that phrase because when you actually think about it, it's so true. When you've got engineers, electricians, whatever tradesmen trying to tell a manager above them who may not have those technical skills, competence or experience, it genuinely is like peeing in the wind at times. It's so difficult to make them see sense because all they think about is cost, program, time, budget.
But then on the flip scale, I tend to find you get two different types of companies. You get the company where you've got some really decent guys out in the field, and the management haven't got a clue about what they're doing. They're completely and utterly disconnected to what goes on actually on site. Or you get management who are all the ones with the qualifications, the experience and everything else, because they work their way up the ladder. They usually pay quite well. And then they employ a load of guys who aren't at all, and their training and everything else is neglected. And I think ongoing training, not just your core courses that you do for your, towards your qualifications as such. But there's a lot of organisations out there that look at it as either a tick box exercise or an unnecessary cost.
I think it's fair to say CPD for me, in my career, when people have said to me, how have you had the career? How did you get chartered? I did my own CPD. I realised that a lot of the employers I worked for would talk about it. They would fill in a form or have a procedure for it. And in the end, I would never get it. But I got to a point when I realised that CPD, because I used to genuinely think CPD was I must go on a course. I have to go on a training course. And CPD is genuinely not just a training course. It genuinely isn't. And that's one of the things that a lot of people, I've heard people refer to it as the CPD or a CPD qualification, or Dave hates this, CPD accredited. Is it fair to say, Dave, there's a company that just goes out and badges stuff with a CPD accredited
Oh,
logo?
there's a number of them.
There's a number of them, but
Yeah.
you don't need that. You don't need it. So, for instance, when Dave you did your 18th edition, of course, online, I can declare that. How many hours was it again? It was a good
20
10
or maybe,
20,
I think,
yeah.
with time and assessment.
Right. So I could easily declare 20 hours. So I'm a professionally registered engineer. I have to do an annual CPD return, right? As part of that, I could put 20 hours watching Dave Watts Sparky Ninja. The criteria for it, which we'll get into, I have to be able to reflect on what I've learned. Not very hard, because I've sat listening to it when I was driving. I've watched it at home on the big screen. That is perfectly acceptable. Now, you didn't go and get a badge that said CPD accredited. And what if I'm gonna rant, because I am gonna rant, I am so sick to death of when I've had I wrote a presentation once for somebody to deliver, and they said to me, "Oh, you have to send it to me first because I need to get it CPD accredited." And I was like, "Oh wow, is that peer assessed?" No, they just have a framework for how the formatting's got to be, and you can only have a logo at the start and at the end. And I was thinking, well, this is an admin exercise. That's all it is. It's a pay a fee and an admin exercise. So for those listening, CPD is not necessarily a course. And Dave, if you don't mind, I'm just going to list out what the IET have developed, because I think it's a good framework. There's a term called T-Waves. Not the best acronym, but it's one that exists. And T-Waves is training, it's work experience, it's academic study, it's volunteering, it's events and seminars, and it's self-study. So training can be soft skills, technical courses, so 18th edition, e-learning. Dave, I think your stuff's e-learning. Distance learning, webinar training. NAPIT do webinar stuff on surge protection and 18th edition stuff. Bidding and tendering, one-day courses, in-house company courses. If you work for a major contractor and they want to do like a site safety refresher one day, then that's all CPD. Your work experience. If you're coaching someone who's brand new to the industry, or you're shadowing someone, or you get put into another, you may be taken off the tools and put into pricing and tendering. All of that is CPD, because it's developing your ongoing skills. If you're doing a master's, a city and guilds, if you volunteer for a local network, or even if you're a scouts volunteer, for God's sake, reading books, reading manufactured instructions, digital sources like Voltimum, for instance, or Pro Electrician magazine, online communities, going to technical events like lighting ones or Alex. All of it is CPD. The key to measuring it is what you remember. I find that the key thing. What you can reflect on. The IET use the term reflection. You don't have to use that term. But what you can remember, because I find when I've done really good courses with passionate people, like my 2391, I remembered 90% of the content. I've done construction contract courses on NEC and JCT, which is a framework of procuring works. I've remembered 2%. And it's how I reflect upon that and how I use it is also key.
So how do you recommend people record that, Paul?
Write it, get a simple spreadsheet or
simple spreadsheet,
and just put a date, where you was, what you did, how many hours you were there for, and a little note going, not just, oh, it was good. It's more of a
reflection.
It's more, I didn't realize that when I watched Dave's videos on overvoltage. I didn't realize that there was so much to know about overvoltage, because it was a section of the regs that I didn't realize. But I've actually found myself obsessed with that section of the wiring regs.
Someone asked me a question on BS 5839 part 6 this evening, and I spent a good half an hour reading through parts of it to, give it to them the information that they needed. And obviously it refreshes some of the stuff that I've learned, but obviously we forget so much.
Just remember one thing, Dan. These podcasts, you could consider them CPD.
There's a difference with that, Dan, in that reflection doesn't necessarily mean your ability to answer questions immediately. It's about your ability to access that. So you had reflection in that you could access the resource, and then you access the resource, and the purpose of accessing that resource probably was most likely to compose an appropriate response to the question.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah. So you went there for that purpose. So I remember Wiring Matters magazine when they used to print it. I got so annoyed when they stopped printing it because I've got
Oh,
a
so
couple
did
of
I.
binders and I've got like an archive as like a scrapbook. Because the problem with CPD is trying to capture it for reference later on. I've got a Dropbox, a terabyte, and it's filled with material. I mean, Schneider's got a huge archive, like an encyclopedia of material as well. And if you can capture things digitally, save them, you can then go revisit them. And so that is the key. I mean, with regards to CPD, if you were told, if you said right, go do 30 hours of CPD, how would you select the CPD?
Who, me? How would I select
Anyone?
it?
How would a person select CPD? What CPD do they need to go and get?
Right. Okay. So if if using the T waves breakdown, there is obviously a minimum of 30 hours required, which is nothing, because what happens is a lot of people panic and fret. Again, this is my experience of it. A lot of people panic and fret over CPD declarations, and what they don't realise is if they just stopped and took stock for 5 minutes, you'd realise that in your day-to-day job, most people are doing CPD constantly. Even the one-man bands, the one-man band domestic installer, I can tell you now, you've only got to watch the like of Nick Bundy, Luke Wichard to know that they are doing CPD every day. They're inquisitive in their videos, and they're demonstrating on their Instagram feeds that they're learning and they're seeking more knowledge. But a lot of people, some of the CPD returns I've had, say like some people have done returns where they've got like 80 hours of volunteering experience, where they've gone away and they've helped set up or run a technical event or seminar relevant to them. For instance, somebody who works in like water treatment has done a 2-day course where they've actually helped chair it and run it. Self-study, someone's done reading up on a new technology that needs to be implemented. So they've spent, a couple of weeks reading up on new standards, books, manuals, equipment, etc. They may have gone and done a 3-day course in, say, I don't know, there's for railway guys, there's the Railway Electrification Infrastructure Seminar. It's a 5-day course, and that you can like declare like 43 hours of CPD. They actually measure it and say you can declare that. Or you can actually just go on a formal training course like a City and Guilds or a HNC or a Masters. It depends how you break it down. And using the T-Wave experience, training, work experience, academic study, volunteering, events, seminars, it's down to you, because there is no right or wrong answer. All there is fit it within that pro forma. That's all that the IET require, is for you to have the conscious awareness that you are developing your knowledge. Anyone who cares in our industry will always develop them. In fact, I'll be honest with you, the only people I've ever seen in the electrical industry who have never really developed their knowledge, and they're going to hate me for saying this, is if you're sat on an industrial job and you're metal munching for years. And we all know sparks who have spent 10 years just doing trunking tray, conduits, ladder racking, and that's all they want to do. For them, CPD would be quite hard unless there's a new fixing technology, new bracketry system. And I've spoken to people who have done that, and I've gone, have you seen these new clamps or this new fixing? And they've gone, yeah, it's really good, and we use this and we do that. Great. Well, you weren't doing that 5 years ago, were you? No. Well, you've emerged your own knowledge, you've developed your own knowledge, and you can easily reflect and communicate that onwards. And that's where I think CPD has been badly sold as a badge that everyone who offers CPD must have it badged up. No, you don't. You don't have to do that. All you need to do is give people some evidence, or the ability to have evidence, which not mandatory, but give them the ability to be able to reflect and remember they've attended. I mean, Dave, you're doing your own certification for your own training material.
You having a beer, Dave?
No, it's espresso.
In a can?
Yeah.
Is that a thing?
Are you having an espresso? So for the avoidance of doubt, Dave is drinking some sort of coffee of some form.
This is Starbucks double shot espresso. What's wrong with you, lot?
I don't do coffee, so I have zero competence in coffees and all of the weird terminology around coffees. It's all coffee for me. and I can't stand this stuff.
It fuels me for CPD gathering.
Yes. Okay. So if you learn something about coffee, you could do. I mean, I went and did. So I'm a CPD assessor for the IET. Thanks for that, Dan. I'm a CPD assessor for the IET, and one of the things that was quite interesting for me, I looked at one guy's approach, and he was watching a Fred Dibner program.
Old Fred Dibner.
Fred Dibner, hey, old boys, yep, yeah, no, northerner. And he watched the entire program, and he said, I found it fascinating. And the person doing the treatment, why? I went, because I didn't realize there was all these different types of explosives and the way that you had to store them. And this guy he looked dangerous, but he was incredibly proficient and competent in how he brought these buildings down. But we look at it, it's a bit lackluster. And this guy had intimate knowledge of stuff that he watched, absolutely engrossed and fascinated. He still remembered it weeks later. He'd done.
But if you're interested in a subject, it's a lot easier to reflect on.
Of course it is. You have to.
And with things like YouTube, I mean, because when it comes to training subjects, I always try to find new revenues and new sources of CPD, and like YouTube is a great one. I often go over to MIT to the lectures, and Professor Llewellyn, the physicist lecturer, I've actually got his book, which I'm reading at the moment, going through Faraday's law and electric fields, and just basic stuff like that. But I can always go back and I can always apply it, and I can always just refresh on that. And that's one of the key things, because you can binge on it. You can actually build up a level of CPD. So the IET push, is that 30 hours as a standard?
Yes, a minimum criteria. Yes,
per annum.
Yes, per annum. And one of the rules that they've introduced as well is they ask for voluntary submissions, although they pick randomly members. And if you do not do a submission, you do not get away with it. You will be asked again for the following year's submission with the previous years. And if you still, after 3 years, have not provided any CPD returns, then you potentially will lose your professional registration.
Okay.
So you will
that's good.
Deregistered.
So with regards to events then and seminars, if I went to, let's say us at Sandown, we were there for 2 days, standing on a stand, that wouldn't work unless I had sufficient reflection for you to consider it as CPD as an assessor, or would that be enough?
In all fairness, if you're going to a trade show and you are able to say, when I go to a trade show, I go there to meet the manufacturers, get my hands on the new products, see the materials, talk about how I can implement them, and learn from the seminars. I found at this particular event, the seminar on EV charging, confusing because there were more questions than there were answers. The person who reviews your CPD return will be an industry expert in that. So I do all of the railway ones, for instance, and any of the electricians, I will do all that, and you will read if they've written it correctly, you will immediately go, yeah, that person actually.
So you'll be able to gauge their actual.
Yeah, and there are different levels of response, whether they are strongly doing CPD. There are various levels and grades when you're assessing CPD, whether they do the minimum, they do a little bit above the minimum, they're fully implementing, they're strongly implementing, or they're just. I mean, my CPD return would be pretty much 20 hours a week, at least every week, and it'd be the same for you, Dave. It'd be a logistical nightmare to do a CPD return because we're so consciously competent of what it is, and that we're doing it all the time. I mean, I had a chat with Lee Ward ages ago, and we were talking about the same subject, and I said to Lee, you have been a prolific CPD guy on social media the whole fuse spur on fans in bathrooms. Loads of people now take pictures and go, it was Lee who started that, because Lee was the one who read up the manufacturer's instructions, went, oh yeah, there's a reason behind this, that's perfectly logical, it makes sense. And then he started questioning it and throwing the knowledge out there, and then other people took up. And those people can easily say, well, I actually learned from an individual who inspired me to go away and look more. And he was right. So now I've improved the way I work from this. And that in itself is a fantastic way of being able to reflect. 5 years ago, before I knew all of you guys, my knowledge, I thought, was at a pretty reasonable standard. Then I met you guys, and I realised on fire, I know nothing compared to Dan. I know on the regs book, I thought I was encyclopedic. You're even more. And then I met Paul, and he made me just want to kill myself because his knowledge is off the charts. And then, of course, we know John. And it's like, John, it's just like, am I allowed in the same room as this this. He's not an encyclopedia. He's the person who writes the encyclopedias with his knowledge.
But he's most likely done like 10 years of study, CPD, reflection, revision,
absolutely.
Research for content, and it's all CPD.
So you've hit a nail on the head, Dave. Academics find it really easy. Sparks, as we know, and this is why we're doing this podcast, the JIB have announced in 2020, as part of holding a JIB card, that there will be a new CPD system in place. I don't know what that is. I don't know what the framework or the criteria is. All I know is the only criteria at the moment is the T-Waves IET system.
So it's a good idea for electricians now to look at the T-Waves and start to actually chew the fat.
Well, every electrician we talk to, we always say to them, I've spoke to them at trade shows and they've gone, what's this CPD about, blah, 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 blah. When they've looked at professional registration, I went, well, it's this. You standing here means you care enough to upskill your own knowledge. And they go, well, yeah, of course. Well, that's CPD.
I guess the real criterion is how we allow or how we remind electricians that they're doing it, most likely instinctively. They've got to start reflecting on that and capturing that, and then when this whole thing comes in, they'll realize actually it's just a little bit like a Dear Diary kind of thing to their normal behaviors.
Where can they find information on T-Waves? Where is that, Paul?
It's if you just Google IET CPD criteria, or just type in IET T-Waves, you'll be able to find a poster called T-Waves What Counts.
Okay.
And it's just it's about as well, it's as simple as you can visualize all of that on one page. It's the easiest thing I've found anyway, because under self-study it says clearly books, journals, articles, digital information sources, internet research, self-study, forums, online communities. So you and I both know that especially the YouTube community and everybody else, they're constantly seeking knowledge, guidance, advice, ways to improve. All of that is easy. Now, I'm sorry, but if you're supposed to Spark's supposed to do a minimum of 30 hours a year, if you give a toss about what you do and you just have that aware, you come to something as simple as this infograph, you can easily map what you do. Because I'll be honest with you, if you're a practicing electrician who uses the regulations, so you're not just working from a design, then easily you will spend, a good 10, 15, 20 plus hours a year reading the wiring regulations, especially given the amount of updates. Doing a training course, watching Dave's videos, listening to his podcasts.
With social media behaviors now, there are probably guys doing a good 2 or 3 hours a week, at least, CPD, and so they're getting probably 10 or so hours a month already. So they start harnessing and actually recording or acknowledging that this is CPD. They don't have a problem.
Would you guys agree or disagree that CPD generally is led by yourself?
I would 100% agree with that. That's one of the reasons why the T-Waves model is something that I've got to learn, because I've never done that. I've gone into the world of consultancy and training, a bit like you, Dan, with consultancy. I've worked with companies looking at competency matrix, training matrix, looking at how they assess competence. And at the time when I was starting to do all that work, I had to do my immediate amount of CPD to make sure that I was up to date with legislations, with standards, and everything else like that. This is why the other day we had an issue online, and I said, "Oh, has he gone to HSG 85?" So I just pulled HSG 85 out of the hat because I knew that HSG 85 is the Health and Safety Executive's Safe System of Work document, has the actual breakdown of the safe isolation procedure.
Yeah.
Because I'm always in these documents, because I'm always referring to them. Because when I work on behalf of a client, and I have to obviously have a reference point, I'm always revising these documents because they are my reference to then advise against. So consulting, advising, and training. Could you do art flash training? Yeah, I'll have a go. Went on a course, did a conference, did some research on CPD, then had a go. But when I deliver training, the first thing I do as a trainer is I speak to some guys in the room. I understand who's in the room, and I'll listen to them feedback. Good trainers, when they're training, they won't just say, shut up and listen. They'll actually let people speak up and they'll learn themselves. So you gain CPD by delivering training at the same time. So I've always kind of found it my own self. It's always been my own self activity. This is why 30 hours a year to me. If I started writing down CPD, like Paul's just said, I'd be like, hang on, I'm halfway through a week and I've hit 30 hours potentially.
You would, and this is the problem with it, because I genuinely believe 30 hours is not enough.
I agree.
My personal opinion, it's not enough. I think that if you're in a professionally registered grade, there should be a minimum of, say, and this is going to be very controversial, I think an engineering technician should probably have at least 200 hours a year. I think an incorporated engineer should probably have 250, and I think a chartered engineer should have about 300. They're my views, by the way. They're not the views of the IET, but I can say what I want because the world's a democratic place, and this is our podcast. But the views in this are not of the IET. I have to say that, by the way, as a little indemnifier. But CPD, I think, is a wicked thing. I think it's a really good thing. How it's implemented into electricians, it'll be very interesting to see how the JIB implement CPD, because at the moment, I think it's fair to say, and I'm looking at you, Dan. Employers of electricians, I employ a subcontractor, and I know for a fact my subcontractor has a competency matrix.
Yeah.
But not necessarily a CPD matrix. Or if I asked them for it, would they just give me the competency matrix and say, well, there's the intent of recertification, because on railways you have to have PTSs and various other permits and tickets and authorizations to work on the railway.
What I see a lot of companies do is just provide some toolbox talk record. That's CPD.
Toolbox talk. Do you know what? Toolbox talk. Yes, that can be CPD, but only if the guys can remember and reflect. And to be honest with you, I have found, and forgive me for saying this out loud, some health and safety cultures on site. Most blokes sit there wearing all the full PPE, and they just go, yeah, whatever, yeah, whatever, and they'll do what they want to do anyway.
The first thing I can think of when you say that, if the JRB or whoever's going to obviously push CPD, I can imagine a lot of guys out on site thinking straight away, well, who pays for that? Who pays for my time?
Yeah, and this
is because people won't want to do it in their own time.
This was an underlying issue that we had. I mean, I remember I still have quite a stiff opinion on the way the JIB perform, because I mean they grade, but they don't monitor. In my honest opinion, they regrade, and then after a period they regrade. But there's no ongoing monitoring. It's the same with SparkSafe. When SparkSafe came in, I had a good chat with Derek. I said it's a great thing. It just lacks the ability to actually execute monitoring of CPD, and he completely agreed with me. It was just something that they were unable to actually put into the system at the time. You know, an organisation that properly. This is the key thing. They can request and demand for CPD, but they must provide the support provisions, either the resources of CPD or guidance on what the CPD should be. You know, again, if I have an electrician that does a specific area of work, let's say he does electric vehicle charging, there should be some identifiable level that CPD belongs in that area of interest. You know, the CPD should be in the direction of the requirement of competence. And competence, as we know, is relative to the nature of the work. What's the point in obtaining CPD if it's not chiseling, or most of it is chiseling towards the nature of my ongoing work?
I think if a lot of companies, if one of the things that scares me is if the JIB, which they have announced because it's in the news on their website, that in 2020 that they've upgraded all their systems and they are going to be implementing it. If they make it acceptable just to attend 5 toolbox talks a year, then it's worthless.
Exactly.
Because what they're doing is they're painting over the cracks in the construction industry, which we know there is a mass skill shortage. There is a severe lack of commitment to competence and CPD in any tender anywhere. How many times, Dan, have you ever worked on a tender where the client has said, by the way, while you're doing this piece of contracted work, you will invest in and develop your staff?
Never.
Right. So when I did SparkSafe, it's part of my contract. And all that is a basic functional check of the competencies and validation of their qualification. And that they nearly fainted when that went into the contract.
What SparkSafe?
Yeah. It was the outcome of it was pretty incredible, to be honest with you, because it did for me what I needed it to do at the time, which is good. And also it gives me some indemnity in front of, if I ever have to stand in front of a judge, which is one of the reasons why I implemented it. The reason I didn't implement, and I don't hold the gold card, although weirdly I do and I don't, but I mainly don't, is because I know that someone with a gold card of 20 years, what does that mean? It's like an MOT in a car 20 years old. There isn't one solution for competence, and until the industry gatekeepers shake that up, it will never happen. Well, what's happened? Have I farted or something?
No, Dan just held his new JRB Gold Cup up to the camera.
Oh, did he? Sorry, mate, I wasn't looking. So,
Yeah.
Dan, you are now a JIB gold card holder. So,
what do
tell
you
us
mean
about your
now?
experience.
I was a JRB Gold card holder many moons ago when I completed my
But
apprenticeship.
yours looks really shiny and nice and sweet.
Yeah, because
and
I've
beautiful.
just literally updated it. Literally.
So you're an
this
approved
week.
electrician with the 18th edition.
No. I'm a JRB grade installation technician, registered electrician with, singing, all dancing.
So the registered
on the
electrician
back.
is the 18th edition part, isn't it?
Yeah.
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 So you're a technician grade. My God, the technician grade used to be it used to be the highest grade you could get on the JRB card, pretty much, if you were a technician. That was like it was 2 years from electrician to get approved,
and then,
then
5 years for technician after 2 years.
You had to wait ages because there was a pay rise involved with that. So you've got that. Oh, okay. Are you still on the tools?
No, I don't have any. They got stolen.
Oh yes. That's right. The week before you bloody left, they all got because you were going to leave him in my shed.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, that's it. Yeah,
Dan was going to leave all of his tools in my shed. I said, "Look, I'll look after them," and they got nicked literally a week before.
When I went to Firex,
at the Excel Centre, they nicked everything.
Literally everything.
Gone. Was that one of your work fans?
Yeah, it was. Yeah. They literally just peeled the door open, peeled it off, took all my stuff. I had a camera to go travelling, a laptop, everything I owned was in that van at that time, and it all got stolen, including all my qualifications, loads of stuff. Like I keep them electronically, but I've only got parts of my qualification, no paperwork.
So you renewed your JRB card the other week?
Yeah, I renewed it simply because I'd done the ECS health and safety assessment in 2018, just as a little refresher, really,
right?
More than anything. And I thought, if I don't apply for my card, basically that assessment runs out. And I thought, I might as well pay 30 quid.
It runs out anyway, doesn't it? You've got to regularly do.
Yeah, but but the reason I got a card was because if I applied for the card, this card runs out in 2023. If I didn't apply for the card, the health and safety assessment, I would have to do it again. It would run out literally in 2 months' time.
When I got mine, my NEBOSH was an exemption.
Yeah, it is. Good.
But now I'd probably have to redo all of it. But I'm not going to be renewing my gold card. To be honest
so when you renewed that card, Dan, did you have to fulfil some other further assessment in the health and safety?
No, it was just literally.
So what has actually extended your awarded competence in the health and safety?
To my knowledge, nothing, Dave.
Paying for the card.
Bought the card, yeah.
Okay, I'm going to say something out loud. I think our standards are so low now; it's mind blowing.
And I went to that that was the first time I'd done the ECS health and safety assessment. In fact, when did I do it? I don't think I've ever done it because.
Did you find it hard?
I didn't even revise. Nothing had turned up.
It's a joke. I did it once, and I just thought it was the biggest embarrassment I've ever seen.
Was it
what colour flex?
Yeah, 4
questions for 110.
Whatever it is.
110 volt yellow. That's not challenging my competence.
Literally, I got 100%. I was in and out.
What's the point of it then?
One of the reasons I got it, Dave, is because a lot of companies I'm working for at the minute, even though this isn't really relevant to what I do, they've asked for it. Even when I'm going onto their sites, onto their properties, and we're not talking construction, we're talking existing builds, occupied properties.
Yeah, but operational working conditions.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And it's just. I've
never understood what these cards. I'll be honest.
For the sake of 30 quid,
now. I'm lost as to what these cards actually provide anyone or anything.
Well, when you get a letter,
as an employer, I just wave. It's like the statement the contractor would be NIC registered. Yeah, but that doesn't prevent bad people misusing the NIC's logo and being really bad. What it does do is gives the NIC a headache.
I think it just makes other people's decisions easier if they say do that instead of that. Higher up the chain.
The letter that you get with this card basically says, take it with you with pride, and it's To me,
Yeah, in fairness, I agree with that, because I have said in previous podcasts, when you join the industry, you should go for gold, because there is no other mechanism or attainment for someone growing in our industry. It's sad, because I would love it if there was something else that people could strive to attain. But at the moment, there's nothing else for people to strive to attain. But I've always said, once you get that card, you don't stop there. Don't stop there at all.
Yeah, I know, and this is the thing. When I mean, I was 19 when I passed my MVQ level 3, completed my apprenticeship. I'd already sat the 2391, the older version, and I obviously upgraded my card within 2 years. I was an approved electrician, and in 2010, when I was made redundant from a JRB registered company, I started up my company. And it was like, well, do we become JRB registered? And I thought, well, what's the point? And then I just let the card run out.
Right.
And it just sits on file. Usually it's still an account. And it's the first time I've actually done anything with it.
Yeah, my one, I've got two at the moment, which is really weird, because I've got my old one, which expires December, which was my 17th edition registered electrician one. And now I've got a new one, as I sent you guys the photo the other day, which is conditional, but it's only valid if I work for the company I did my apprenticeship with, which is, I find really confusing, because I only applied for my gold card when I was working for EDF Energy. And I've never understood that. And I do think there's a glitch in their system, but because all I ever did was send them my 18th edition certificate, and I did it via the app, the system that they've got.
The My
and
ECS,
then
whatever it is.
It churned out, it churned out another card. And to be honest with you, the only card that I've held in any value, because I have been off the tools for so long, was the black site manager's one. And even then, mate, in the last 10, 15 years, the amount of time I've been asked for a JRB card, virtually never.
Yeah, and there's a lot of electrical contractors I'm working for now, helping them out with competence, with how they manage their operations, restructuring management, and a lot of these companies in London. Obviously, they're not JRB registered companies whatsoever, but they don't even care about this card. It's not even a thing. It's
so do they not require it or request for it?
A lot of the time, no. But what I tend to find is the client usually asks for the operatives to have an ECS health and safety assessment or card. Mm-hmm. That's what they're asking for.
Do you know what this is? This is the visually impaired leading the partially sighted.
Well, it is, because it's pointless, isn't it?
Because it is pointless. If you genuinely think that someone walking on your site is better protected because they know what colour flex represents what voltage, it's about at the end of the day, I like the skate term, the skills and knowledge, the attitude to training, the experience. You've got to apply a balance of minimal qualification, not technical knowledge, common sense, savvy, attitude, and your behaviours around each task you're doing. A card, genuinely, I'm sorry, but what does that do?
Having said that, though, when you log into the ECS, it's called My ECS.
Yeah, I've logged in as well.
Yeah, and you upload your qualifications that you've had, and obviously it lists out. I mean, there's qualifications I've got that aren't even listed on it.
Same here.
For example, one simple one was the Electric Vehicle Sitting Guilds qualification. So it's not even on there. Why? I don't know.
I've had this debate with them on previous cards where I've said, can you list all my qualifications? And they turned and said, no, we only list certain ones. So I've got my old 2400, 2391, 2377, stuff like that. But other ones I didn't have, and I never understood why. But I've noticed over the years, maybe now my age is showing, that I do think the JRB consistently evolve and change and develop their methods and their procedures. I've logged into my ECS and they don't have copies of any of my original qualifications. Yeah, I sent them to them.
All right.
I think. I mean, obviously they're under new management now.
They are indeed.
New guy in charge, and he's made some good potential announcements of intention.
Yeah,
they're saying they're going to. I mean, we're talking here about CPD. They've got that agenda. If you combine that card system with the need to actually produce CPD beside that card system, we're going in the right direction.
Yeah,
we're going in the right direction.
I don't disagree with that.
I think the biggest frustration is just the card itself, knowing what you need to get the card, always seems to change. I see every day people going, "I was told I needed this, but now I need this." And obviously, we are having issues right now, even with CPS registration, where the requirements for entry there is adjusting with culture of competence, I guess you could say. As we start talking more and more about competence, suddenly these bodies are starting to actually be a little bit more strict. I'm noticing that kind of trend.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of tightening of the waistbands.
Yeah,
is
but
good.
again, I mean, guys like what's that guy's name? Andy Reeks. He's from the GIB. He's one of the GIB's guys. He's always trying his hardest, but people are always asking, "What do I need? What do I need? What do I need?" And clearly it's not clear enough, or it's not obvious enough, or there's just too many different approaches or methods or ways to get cards.
Yeah, and
You know?
I do like the idea of a card and like the ECS card, because you can get one as a fire alarm installer, and there's different roles, and it's good to have all of that checked. But the way it's done isn't quite right.
Not quite. No, it's confusing.
Yeah,
It is confusing. And again, if they're going to bring in if they're going to bring a CPD structure, then this kind of goes down the alignment of what I was looking at with the idea of a license to practice, where you can basically say, we have the AM2, which is the entry point to industry.
Yeah,
I agree. That's the gold card is the point of they call it the end point, but we need to think about the big, the point where you enter and you begin.
Point. Yeah.
But then you need to start looking at the different directions you may go into. You may go into EV, PV, you may go into both, but you need to then develop competence and collect CPD in each of those avenues.
And that's it. That is exactly it.
And that's got to happen.
Competence. If someone asked me about HV and DC, I've been able to keep any evidence of any HV work I've ever done, and any work for DC work that I've ever done. However, that was years ago, so I can't profess or even claim to say I have competency in it. However, I do have familiarization, awareness, and a basic understanding. What I would maybe call a fundamental principles approach to it, but in application tomorrow, no. I would need to redevelop my CPD, rebrush up my skills, understand my extent and limitation of what I'm competent to take on. And I think CPD, for those listening, the reason why we're talking about CPD, it's going to be entering your life in the next few years, whether you want it or not. It's very prevalent, but the message is don't worry, because if you actually care and you're listening to this, then you're doing it anyway.
The point of CPD is actually just to kind of collect evidence and for us to reflect on what we do instinctively. And to be perfectly honest, if we're not doing enough CPD, that's the point of this, to entice those who don't do enough to do more. And again, hopefully, if people don't do enough, the system will then carve them off.
Yeah, indeed.
I put a post on LinkedIn today saying it was a bit of a rhetorical questions, but has nobody got fire alarm qualifications these days?
Oh, I saw that.
Yeah, because
I haven't,
I'm involved in a number of companies who are taking on fire alarm service engineers, and most of them who I'm coming across have an absolutely sweet FA in terms of qualifications.
Yeah.
And some guy said to me, it's madness. Someone's more likely to get a job who's got no experience but got FIA qualifications, for example, compared to a guy who's got 25 years with no qualifications. But then how do you measure that guy's competence if he's got no qualifications? And likewise,
well, again, this is the problem with saying, and this goes back to the problem that we have potentially with the private rented sector, where they're saying, qualified is competent. It's a very dangerous thing to assume qualified is competent. We have to make sure we identify competence as a combination of experience to go with that qualification. If a qualification doesn't offer experience development, like an MVQ, we've got to collect that experience. We've got to find a way to quantify it and collect evidence of it.
Yeah, and one company I've been assessing their competence, if you like, they've got a large number of electricians doing electrical testing in properties, and they've got what's the trade skills for you City and Guilds, it's advertised. I've forgotten what it is now.
4-1 something.
Yeah, a 5-day course workshop.
Yeah. Now the problem with that, I've explained to you the whole accredited program thing. The guild, the whole point of domestic approach wasn't supported by City and Guilds. City and Guilds did create well, they didn't create Ofqual. The regulating body created an MVQ in domestic. The City and Guild numbers are 2397. It's a 2-year course. They delivered it at Tresham College. And Gary at Tresham, when I first went to see him, he said, "Oh, half the people still fail this." But that was a portfolio-based course. So that 4141 should never have been created, because the idea of the accredited programs was when you create a course in a market that doesn't really exist.
But these guys are turning around to me saying, "That's my qualification. I'm qualified."
Yeah.
I'm like, unfortunately, mate, it doesn't work like that.
It doesn't work that way.
But also the clients, because they're not savvy with this, are allowing people on their sites or properties with these qualifications of 5 days.
Training companies in general. There's been a lot of, I'm not going to say fibs or lies, but there's a lot of mistruths or a lot of discussions that go in the direction that entices learners to go on their learning journey. They've got products on their shelf, and they want every person who comes to them to give them their story, and then want to find a way to twist that story to suit their learning journeys. A lot of people aren't given the full truth, and I have so many people coming to me in my groups and stuff who go, "Oh, there's one." I was speaking to one of the ladies on TESP, because there are people coming to me who are doing distance learning courses, and there's a City and Guilds registered company who actually resells the training to other companies. So there are 3 or 4 other companies that aren't City and Guilds accredited, but they sell the City and Guilds training. When you go on their websites, it actually says, it's 2365, 2382, 2377. And it then says, oh, yes, well, we'll give you the distance learning material. But then when you go down to the assessment bit, it says all assessments carried out by a different organization.
Right.
All right. So that is a complete tear up of the rule book, because when you actually award a qualification, it's dependent upon the person delivering the training to actually be mapped to the regulated qualification, and the awarded qualification has to be delivered, and the assessments have to be delivered to somebody who has been suitably prepared for it. And if the person's awarding the qualification or the assessments hasn't properly observed the delivery of the training, then the whole thing is just a flaw. And that's the way it's going. Training providers, it's lots of improvements needed. And again, none of them are focusing on CPD.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. So whose responsibility is CPD? Because it's so bloody important. The guys who I tend to find who are, excel at their careers are the ones who do CPD.
Well, CPD isn't even a spoken term in any of the apprenticeship. Apprentices. I had this chat with the guys at NET about the idea of the AM2 being more reminded of and more prepared for during the journey of the apprenticeship. So they're more aware of the assessment at the end of the journey. It's the same with CPD. They need to be given opportunities to obtain CPD along that journey, so they know what it is. So as they go to the end of their 3 or 4 year training, they're not suddenly going to have to restart a new method or a new mental approach. They're just going to carry on as they were and carry on retaining CPD, because they've been brought up with that idea. If you pass, if you train apprentices to already seek and obtain CPD, which is basically what MVQ level 3 is technically, isn't it?
Yeah.
You're collecting your performance evidence. That's what you're doing. It's like doing that, but from a CPD perspective. Then when they get to that 3rd or 4th year, they're just going to carry on.
Yeah.
And that's the improvements that we need to make.
I think the upskilling and the improvement in behaviours in our industry is going to have to come in small incremental steps. I think that's a given. I think I've said this before, anybody who wants a short, sharp shock, and sadly, unless there is a massive movement from government, it's not going to happen. And the government won't do a damn thing, because the government have already told the IET that unless like 80% of the trade say we want change, they won't do anything to regulate it. And remember, every time the government have tried to step in, it's then been complained about, and the government have then kind of almost watered down. Look at Part P. When Part P first came out, phenomenal, because it required individual competence of the installer. Within 8 weeks, 12 weeks, it was gone. It was removed, reissued. If you can get hold of a copy of the original Part P, you'll be very lucky, to be honest with you. Be very, very lucky to get an original copy of it because it disappeared doubly damn quick. And normally you should be able to access the original pieces of legislation, but not this one. Can't find it anywhere.
Yeah.
But I do remember it because it caused chaos at the wholesalers. I remember wholesalers, blokes were standing for hours arguing about it. And remember, if you regulate an industry too much and it costs the consumer will vote the government out. 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. It's a very difficult path.
Yeah, it's not about what's right. It's about popularity, isn't it?
Sadly, yeah. But I think the only people in this trade who are going to do something about this trade is the trade itself. And if they can come to a common understanding and a framework that the good people will always level up, to use Dave's term, and their businesses will naturally grow. Yes, there will be what do they call it? The grey economy of there's an estimate that 60%, I was told this, I don't know if it's true, but 60% of people who do work on or near electrical systems are in the grey economy. So if you've got, I don't know, 100,000 electricians, there's another 60% of that who are not even registered, or do you know what I mean, or under the radar. So if there's 100,000 electricians in the UK who are registered or GRB card holders, period, there's 60,000 other people not with any scheme, any card, still doing work, undercutting. And we know there's more than 100,000 sparks in the UK. So there is what they call a grey economy, and there is an inherent fear if you regulate an industry that the grey economy will grow. If you do what they've done with gas safe and make it illegal to buy a consume unit or a boiler, it tightens the throat on that grey economy. It kills that grey economy, which should then help the competent electrician who wants to hold the qualifications with pride, or hold the card with pride, or make sure that they're proud to do CPD. And I think that journey is happening at the moment, and it's quite an exciting one, to an extent, if you find it all exciting, that is. But yeah, so CPD. Dave, final thoughts?
CPD is something I've been doing instinctively for a number of years, just out of interest, just out of keen attempt to be a better trainer, a better consultant. And you don't really realize how much you can be considered as CPD. I don't track CPD. If I was, I'd probably have to do it sensibly because I'd be writing forever.
Yeah, well, I believe there's an app. I asked the IET 4 years ago to produce an app, something really simple, common sense. When you're on the course, you can record it there and then. Yeah. Then there's no excuse.
Yeah, but no, I think
that's coming, I believe.
A lot of the stuff I say online now is all driving towards CPD, because CPD is right now the main absentee in JIB strategies and SparkSafe strategies, CPS strategies, where we're certifying and we're saying off you go. We're authorizing, we're saying off you go. We're not bringing them back. We're not reviewing them. We're not sampling them. We're not assessing them. And the yearly thing is basically a show. For the CPS. If we find great ways to entice and support and motivate CPD, then again, people are going to level up, people are going to go to high levels, and the industry will start to improve.
Dan, your final thoughts on CPD and where we are and where we need to be and what your views are?
In the words of Paul Meenan, the more you learn, the more you earn.
Oh yeah, no, he's a lunatic. He needs drug and alcohol testing. For me, actually, I've got a final thought on it, and that is simple. A lot of people they'll go, I heard a podcast the other day about CPD. What does it mean? What does it mean? I can't remember the term. How about this for a term? Can probably do. Think about it. I can probably do that. And with CPD, continuing professional development, I can probably do it. Okay. So that's one way of thinking about it. If you want the layman, the simple introduction, I can probably do it. CPD. Continuing professional development, you can probably do it. I want to be able to do, I can probably do HV. Well, I can if I do the work, if I level up and I do the CPD and I record it.
Well, to be honest, I've been asked a number of times, can I do a course in this? I've gone, I probably can do that. Yeah. And then I get a book, and then I spend the next 3 or 4 days
can I just say,
reading up and doing it.
Trademark E5. Within 2 years, it will be exactly where Level Up was, stolen by Google. Yeah. But this is a digital record of our intent to trademark.
Well, this is copywritten. This is if you've produced it first.
We have. Nobody's automatically ever heard that term, and I'll tell you why, because I came up with it 60 seconds before I said it. My brain works.
I haven't heard that one out.
No, because my brain has this washing machine in it that spins out really good ideas, and unless I churn them out quickly or write them down, they disappear, or other people steal them, as you know well, Dave. Right. Okay. Go on.
I
Sorry.
also want to hear the listeners' views on CPD or anything we've spoken about today. So obviously we put this on all social media platforms. There's comments. You can comment. We want to hear comments. We'll always engage. We want to hear from you.
So yes, Julie kicked once again. I think what Dan is trying to say is thank you very much for listening. And if you have any feedback, please leave it in the YouTube comments or email us info@e5group.org.uk. If you like any of our content, please share it on your platforms. Please reach out and engage any one of us individually or as a group. Like it, share it, subscribe, please. It's very much appreciated. We don't earn anything out of it, but it's nice to be nice and it's nice to be appreciated. So thank you very much.
Thanks for listening. Goodbye.
All right, cheers. Bye bye now.
Right. Take care of yourself and each other. Bye bye.